Today we are going to be dealing with the subject of spiritual growth, and we're going to look at what it means. And also we're going to deal with the subject of love, because they're kind of like, they're connected, because spiritual growth and love, they're basically connected with one another. But before we get into love, we're going to deal with spiritual growth and how we define spiritual growth. The first definition of spiritual growth is raising one's frequency. Again, that's raising one's frequency. Now, frequency is vibration. If you would like to go ahead and get into quantum physics and things that are related to frequency, then you can go ahead and Google frequency, and then you can find out as much as you would like about quantum physics and things related to frequency. But right now, we're not going to deal with quantum physics. We're going to deal with just the definition of spiritual growth. So again, the first definition is raising one's frequency, because when your frequency is raised, that is spiritual growth. Now, the second definition of spiritual growth is raising one's consciousness. And the objective in raising one's consciousness is raising one's consciousness to the higher self. So that is the second definition of spiritual growth. The last definition is something that is a little bit unique. A lot of people have not really talked about it, and that is ascending. In the Bible, you have Jesus ascending up into the heavens. This is very, very important, and I can't really overstate enough the importance of this situation in the Bible. So now we have the three definitions of spiritual growth. The objective of spiritual growth specifically is for individuals to reach at least the fourth or fifth dimension. Again, the objective of spiritual growth is for each individual to at least to reach the fourth or fifth dimension in their spiritual growth. We live in a three-dimensional society. We have been programmed by the society to do what we're told to do. The society as a whole is not concerned with the freedom and aspirations of individuals and their dreams. But for all practical purposes today, all of those things are a part of spiritual growth. Okay, we're still on the subject of spiritual growth. Now, the objective of spiritual growth is to reach the fourth or fifth dimension. Once a person reaches the fifth dimension, they have officially ascended. Again, once the person reaches the fifth dimension, they have ascended, and our objective here is to reach either the fourth or fifth dimension in terms of spiritual growth. Okay, let's get into a little bit more detail as far as spiritual growth and what does it mean and what does it entail. Okay, spiritual growth means you're using 100% of your brain's capacity. Today in science, it is agreed upon, even at the university level, that we use 10 to 15% of our brain's capacity. Again, it is agreed upon on the university level that we use 10 to 15% of our brain's capacity. Now, if we only use 10 to 15%, I mean, if you had $200 and you only used $20, or you could only use $20, it's like, what's the point of the $200? So if everyone is using only 10 to 15% of their brain's capacity, this means that we are very, very limited. But in actuality, we are not really limited, because we have the capacity to use 100% of our brain's capacity. And again, this is agreed upon by scientists and the university as a whole. So imagine what would happen if we would let ourselves go and use 100% of our brain's capacity. Now, the objective of life is growth, spiritual growth. That is the meaning of life. That is the objective of life. I've heard a lot of people talk many times, okay, what is the meaning of life? I'm here today to give you the actual meaning of life. The actual meaning of life is 100%, number one, spiritual growth. The meaning of life is to be all that you can be. You cannot be all that you can be if you're only using 10 to 15% of your capacity or your potential. To be all you can be, you need to use 100% of your brain's capacity. And that's what happens when in spiritual growth. This is what happens when you grow. The more you grow, the more you use your brain's capacity. That is spiritual growth. Now, let's get into some of the details of what really happens to a person when they use 100% of their brain's capacity. Okay, now let's deal with the results of spiritual growth. And really, we can look at religion to see the results of spiritual growth. If you look at people like Jesus, if you look at people like Muhammad, if you look at people like Buddha, if you look at Hinduism, in all of these religions, there are things such as miracles happening. And when it comes to spiritual growth, this is the results, or these are the results of spiritual growth. Miracles do happen. For example, the miracles that can happen in one's spiritual growth, for example, in Hinduism, is levitation and things of that nature. And I'm saying, imagine if we're only using 10 to 15% of our brain's capacity right now. If we're using 100%, then yes, of course, miracles will happen. I mean, look at today's society and look at the things that we're able to do. We're able to go to the moon. So imagine if we were using 100% of our brain's capacity, and people such as Jesus, he did use all of his capacity. He did ascend. So, of course, when you allow the divine inside of you, really anything is possible. Levitation, I mean, you read in the scriptures, you read about a person walking on water, anti-aging, and even the conquering of death.